Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series pulling together experts in mindset, nutrition, training, recovery, and today in heart, health, hardiness, aging well, changing the pace. I've got the incredible, oh my goodness, I can't wait for you to get to know her, Pat VanGalen. Welcome, Pat.
Hello, Tennille, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm really fired up about it.
Yes, so am I. We have been anticipating this conversation for a while. And the reason is because it's something that is really not talked about all that much. And we are going to dive in deep and get ready, everybody. And if you are not watching this, because you have an option to also listen to audio, I do encourage you. We are going to be presenting slides to help take us through some of this information. But let me first, before we get into that, let me introduce you and tell everybody a little bit about you. And yeah, because that's important. So 45 years plus years of experience. Now, let me tell you, this is not easy to find you. This is not easy to find you. There's not too many female athletes, females that have been in the trenches for the length of period that you have and the wealth of experience that you have in educating and participating and living the life to support people, both in corporate America and recently you're doing a phenomenal job with MedFit. Again, I'm bringing up MedFit, this organization with Lisa Doherty, and the incredible work that she is doing and getting the support to do. You have what you're doing there is you are the creator and the author of the cardiac rehab fitness specialist course that is going on. And this is, you have a master's of science. You have so many letters behind your name. I'm not even sure where to go. So what I'm basically saying to everybody is that we're in good hands to learn all about the heart and just generally how to age in the way that we want. Is that like with power and fitness and strength and spirit and love and all those things. So thank you. Did I miss anything in my introduction? I know I did. 45 years is a lot, you know?
No, you can't. You can't even, no. If I don't have my old resumes, I can't remember some of the stuff I did.
Right. I know, right? So, all right. So let's get started on the interview. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on and over our the slides that you have, because they're going to help us really guide this discussion. And the first question that I have for you here is, could we just go and look at it from the big broad picture right away and say, like, what is happening for female athletes in general as we go through the perimenopausal transition and into postmenopause in terms of our health, like our heart health, like what's going on, where our hormones are shifting? Does this matter for our heart? We're aging. Take us through.
Well, first of all, let me say it's normal. It's a normal part of aging. And we should do our best, especially in what we do, to not medicalize it.
Okay.
To be aware of it, to build the biggest buffer reservoir we can to deal with it. It's kind of like pregnancy in the sense that it's individual. Everyone's not the same.
Right.
Some people start in their middle 30s, and it takes 4 to 8 years before. Postmenopause means you actually had no period for 1 year, 12 months.
Yeah.
So some people have a big lead up to this. And basically your body's just gradually reducing the amount of estrogen that you're producing. And the symptoms of peri are very much like what people always talk about with menopause. You know, you get the hot flashes is probably the biggest complaint. Second to that would be lack of sleep from the hot flashes. The peri part is when your periods start to become a little more irregular. They're not predictable. So, but some people, they don't start it and end it till their 50s. Bam, it's over. So it's very, very individual. And the symptoms are similar, to the menopause itself. But as I said, some people have a big lead up, some don't. But I will tell you this, because I did a PhD study back in the 90s on functional training for postmenopausal women. It was an 8-month functional training intervention. We measured all the blood work, the lipids, the blood pressures, every metabolic thing I could get my hands on at that time. And again, I had 48 women. They were all different.
Right.
So the better you take care of yourself, the better you're going to get through it 99% of the time.
Right.
And the issue really, and what's unique about Tennille's group here, is you folks out there are all training. You're taking good care of yourself. You're trying to eat well, sleep well, manage your stress, have decent rhythms to your day. All that is a big plus, not only for the perimenopause, postmenopause, but for aging in general.
Right.
So as far as actual cardiovascular risk factors, remember, a lot of this comes from what you've been doing for the last 2 decades. Atherosclerosis starts in our 20s. It doesn't just show up overnight. And that's true with diabetes, it's true with frailty, it's true with hypertension, all of those things. So the more you invest in your health and not become obsessed about it, the better you're going to get through this. So, and the biggest complaint I would say, probably, and you probably hear this too, Tennille, is when the women finish the menopause and they've been the postmenopausal for a year or so, they complain about the fat gain in the belly. That's the biggest, complaint, other than hot flashes and not sleeping. But folks, I'm telling you right now, you take good care of yourself, that doesn't happen. It's not, if you do this, it's not a piece of menopause. It doesn't have to be. Neither does poor health. Neither does no energy. But as we go through this presentation, you'll see that it's so much more than just exercise. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. So what about the athletes? Okay, so let's get into the athlete heart. And so we know that so basically we're aging. It's all the points that you've just made. And now let's look and let's get really deep into the athlete's heart. And specifically, if we can even start to think about it in terms of female athletes' heart. So let's start again broad, like what's different between our hearts and the heart of sedentary or other individuals?
Sure. Tennille and I talked before, everybody out there. There's lots of information here and lots of it is for your reference, okay? But bottom line, if I had to list all the benefits of being physically active and formerly training as an exercise, I would have to have 1,000 slides.
Yeah.
Now, this is just to show you the benefits on the cardiovascular system, the 2 columns in the middle. And so basically, folks, if you take good care of yourself, you can slow the trajectory of that aging curve by about 20 to 30 years if you take care of yourself. So the benefits here on the heart, we're going to have improved, if you remember your heart, the ventricles and the atria, we're going to improve the function of all of those. And as aging and menopause hit, it doesn't take this big drop. It's more about what you've been doing for decades before. We're going to have better systolic heart function, better diastolic heart function, and we're even going to protect the valves in our heart. And then if we look at vascular, all the vessels, the large arteries, the arterioles, the capillaries, and even the great big aorta, the lining of those vessels, it remains very elastic and intact. So we're much less prone to atherosclerosis and hardening of the arteries and everything else. And then, of course, we could go on and on about the effect of all the systems, the respiratory system, the bones, the muscles, the fascia, the brain, the neural networks. I can't list it all.
It goes on.
Bottom line, train till you drop.
Train till you drop, everybody. And it's never too late to start.
If you drop at 90 on those cross-country skis, sucking wind, and you're out of here, that's the way to go. That's what people hope for.
You heard it from Pat. That's the way to go. All right. Okay. So now we have it. So we understand both, more generally and why we want to just keep moving. We've got strong hearts. We like our atria, our systolic, diastolic, all those things. Things are pumping.
Yep.
Now let's get into, I don't know if you wanted to say anything more, but, is there any research specifically on female athletes and in perimenopause and beyond? What else do we know?
Well, I will say this, we're gaining on it because now we have more female athletes across the lifespan, training, competing, and doing. Remember, 50 years ago was when the first woman ran the marathon, 60 years ago. So I was around then. I remember that day. People didn't do it. And, at that time, they thought women couldn't do it. Well, we've completely upset that apple cart. So now we have more data. But I wanted to bring this up to Neil. I think it's just good advice for coaches and people in general. For about 60 years now, the American College of Sports Medicine and the equivalent in Canada, the CASEM, I believe, CASEM it's called, they've been collecting data on endurance athletes for this long. Now we have more women subjects, but I would like to share with everyone, if you are concerned, and it comes up again later when Tennille and I are talking, if you're concerned about maybe you have a family history of something and you've been training and maybe you're getting some palpitations and you're getting very anxious about it, you can't go to a regular doc or even a regular cardiologist unless they have access to some really good testing. And there's a team of people that do this. So a lot of times it's your university people who fulfill this. I'm not sure where you're all at, but look so you have that resource because it's very valuable. And if you're the type of person who's getting after the aging thing, you don't want to be slapped on meds if you don't have to be.
Right.
So,
okay.
Really important. So that's just a little message on the sports cardiology. It's a true field all by itself.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio is also excellent for this. So a couple of their things, but check your resources.
Yeah.
But when we get to the ladies, we're different.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're different. But the thing is, now we have people to study. And this is a really good thing, but I think probably what happened for decades was, well, we have 20 male subjects and we have 1 female. And they're more like case studies at that point. So now we're collecting data and it's coming out. Yeah. Is it really, really, really good data yet? Not necessarily, but it's coming. And I'll just quote a couple things here. As most studies investigated male athletes with few reports on female counterparts, it's crucial to have a better understanding on any physiological cardiac adaptation to exercise in female athletes. See, the problem, it's not a problem, it's a challenge. Cardiac adaptation occurs with all kinds of movement, all kinds of physical activity. And depending on your sport, whether it's endurance, power, strength, skill, whatever, they don't necessarily, if a normal cardiologist never works with athletes and they see an EKG and it looks weird, they think there's something wrong. So the question now is the adaptation normal? Because she trains. So this is what they're trying to do, is actually come up with measurements and norms for female endurance athletes. Yeah. And there's some really good news here too, folks, because people get nervous about this. Yes, we adapt, and on an EKG or even on the echocardiogram or even on a stress test, we're weird. I remember back in the 80s, I took the ACSM exercise test technologist course and they tested me. I had 1st degree AV block, okay, because my EKG was weird.
Right.
Was I healthy as a horse? Yes. No. So it's an adaptation to training. And I think this gives some of our ladies, especially, peace of mind, because you hear about sudden cardiac death, or you worry about myocardial fibrosis. Well, actually, it's much more common in males. So just take that one to the bank.
Okay.
Maybe we're the cause of it. No, just kidding. So anyway, and remember, because of our hormones, we kind of get a 10-year grace period for the coronary arteries, for the presentation of cardiac problems. It's not that they're not there, but the estrogen kind of protects us for about a decade. But again, I'm talking to a population here is pretty healthy. And this is just to show you difference between male and female EKGs. They are different. This is a reference for you. You can go right to it, or you can even give it to your cardiologist if he wasn't up on it.
Right.
And then this is kind of a summary of the main differences in cardiac adaptation to exercise. So yes, EKG, yes, echocardiogram, but I want you to look at the very bottom. It's kind of cool. Well, my husband wouldn't want to say that, but anyway, on the left side is the male, on the right side is the female. And you can see on the bottom left corner, males have an increased risk for coronary artery calcification, coronary artery disease, increased risk for AFib, atrial fibrillation, and an increased risk for myocardial fibrosis. Whereas you look on the other side, we're at a lower risk. So that's good information. So when our EKG or our echo is done, or we have a matched stress test, and it doesn't match up with normal sedentary female, that doesn't mean it's a pathology. So they're trying to, figure this out. So you can't just look at these things. You got to look at your bloods, your blood pressures. You've got to look at your various, endocrine system. So, and then some other things here. This is just to reiterate the fact that we are different. Males and females exhibit many biological, anatomical, and hormonal differences, and cardiac adaptation to exercise is no exception. And so we're gaining on it, folks. We're gaining on it.
It's really an important point just to pause on. Like, we know that women are not small men. Dr. Stacy Sims has been just revolutionary in this.
Yep.
And we also are starting to learn in all the different facets in which this actually is playing out, in addition to how we train and like all the different pieces of it. It's really phenomenal. And so one thing I just want to point out is, like, we're just talking about the heart here, but this can be echoed in every probably area of study, microbiome, how the liver functions, how everything functions, because they're the communication systems, and we're just learning. We're at such its infancy. So again, just coming into how do you feel? How is it coming into knowing this information is really important. Okay, let's keep going because you're doing great. Okay, female athlete heart. Let's keep going.
All right, just feel free to interrupt anytime. The point is that the data is growing. We now have more people to study.
Right.
This is huge.
Yep.
And when I do in the cardiovascular course, it's really a cardiometabolic course. It's all about aging well, so all the systems are in good order.
Right. Okay. Right.
This is very interesting. It's here for you to check out. It's the most recent thing I could actually find, and it's done on Olympic athletes, recently published, but really good stuff because they broke the 360 female Olympic athletes into 4 groups.
Yeah.
Skills, power, like weightlifting, snowboarding, mixed things like soccer, tennis, and then the endurance sports. And so they found some pretty darn significant differences. Again, what's nice about this, each athlete, as you know, with an Olympian would have a clinical exam, they'd have an ECG test, they'd have an echocardiogram, plus all the performance parameters and all the blood work. So they actually documented differences. So you can look at this, but it's all about a sex-based approach to interpreting the differences.
Right.
And good data here. and here's a little bit more specifics. But the point is, again, what is normal for an endurance athlete, a power athlete, a skills athlete? And as these women age and they continue to train, what's normal? So that's the question, but we're gaining on it. You can see there in the bottom, second to the bottom bullet, women engaged in endurance sports had the biggest increase in the size of the right ventricle and right atrium, the upper chamber, followed by those in other disciplines.
Yeah.
So there's differences among athletes based on their sport and their training as well.
Yeah.
So this is where the data is coming from, and it's always good to take it from the best of the best and then bring it, try to draw it into active people who aren't necessarily professional or Olympic athletes.
Right.
So that's what she was saying here. This chick is out of UCal Irvine, I believe it is. But anyway, she's saying it doesn't easily translate, but that's where we start with healthy people.
Right.
So anyway, that's what we're doing. But at the bottom bullet, we don't have concrete normal values yet. It's coming. But I think for coaches and for our women athletes out there, you just have to keep sharing what you do to take care of yourself. Because many people in medicine don't get the training thing. They think of exercise for health only. They may have never had any experience with competition or training for a specific event. And they're really not trained in any of this. They don't take exercise physiology unless you're in sports cardiology. So it's, and your primary care and your OBGYNs, they read about it, but they don't necessarily do it.
Well, so, yeah. And I think that to come to the point, and it is a bit of a question in here too, it's that the heart is a muscle.
Yes.
So the heart and how like the rhythm, your EKG, all these structural changes also will change as we go through an annual training plan, things can change. So exactly. Just where your heart might be, how it's functioning at one point of your training cycle or year actually will look different at another point of your training year. And because it's a muscle. So, as we, expand our volume or expand the work or load and then retract it, because that is very healthy thing to do, we also will see that change in the heart because it does not stay static. Things can change.
Totally. Spot on. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
okay.
Our body adapts to what we do or what we don't do.
What we don't do. And sometimes, slowing down is actually healthful. So, managing, because we need the recovery and all those things. Okay. So can we go into the symptoms here? Oh, this is symptoms of atrial fibrillation. So my question was going to be like, okay, perimenopause. Like I know my athletes that I'm in conversation, they're just like, they're sitting on their couch and all of a sudden their heart rate is going through the roof. They're just like, what's going on? And then in other ways, it's this idea of the struggle of the warm up. So help us understand what's happening and what are some differences between the health and the perimenopause and the other things we need to be worried about.
Sure. I put this on here. Remember, women are still at a lower risk for this.
Right.
But the reason I chose it when Tennille and I talked was I just had a client who went through this. Healthy lady's been training, probably 35 years, very good condition. And she is 48, so she's in this peri thing. Her menstrual cycle has become a little bit irregular, but she's not, she takes really good care of herself.
Yeah.
But then she's like, Pat, I'm getting this stuff. Does it happen when you exercise or do any work? Nope, it happens sitting on the couch. And I'm not watching any scary movies either. So
yeah.
What we did, now, this is where you back up a bit. Although she has no cardiovascular risk factors at all, 0.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom had a heart attack in her early 60s. So that's where her mind goes.
Yeah, I mean, that's scary, right?
Sure it is.
Mom in her
Sure.
60s. That's
Right.
scary. Yeah.
Yep. So what we did, we talked a lot about it, and I said, well, look, what you probably ought to do is go see a cardiologist, get a referral from your primary care, and see what they say. So basically, what happens? They give you a resting EKG, they do some blood work, check all your vitals, boom, 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 and of course, from that, they didn't figure anything out. So then the next step is, okay, we're going to send you to the cardiologist, echocardiogram, ECG, and you're going to wear the Holter monitor for 1 week.
That's
And
hard.
now with the technology, it goes straight to the cardiologist.
Yeah.
And after all that was said and done, nothing. They couldn't pinpoint a thing. And she has not been getting them. So anyway, for her own peace of mind, because the anxiety can be worse than the actual thing,
Yeah.
this was a sample report. You can look at this. This is her echocardiogram. And I put it up here for you to just to kind of look at what they study.
Yeah.
So basically they're taking pictures of the heart, la, 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 la. But she also did the max stress test. Max, nothing. So peace of mind, follow up. And in her case, maybe the peace of mind helped them go away. But if she had not had the family history, I don't think she would have been so eager to maybe pursue this.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's probably the best course of action. That's why this family history thing is important. And we can always ask, did you inherit the habits or did you inherit the genes? But when these things occur in their 50s or 40s, the youngest guy I ever had in cardiac rehab was 28 years old. So that's a serious family history thing, and that occurs. But for peace of mind, you can follow up. But I think with this group, Tennille, looking for that sports cardiology team is probably cuts to the chase.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, back to what Tennille was asking. Yeah, things change as we age. 25-year-old cardiovascular system is going to be superior in most cases to somebody in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now, having said that, what you can see on this nice little picture here is the things that happen with normal aging. This is not necessarily what happens with people who age well and take really good care of themselves.
Okay.
But it's all about, can we extend that health span and then nudge it right up to the lifespan? And we know we can do this. We have data on many, many masters athletes who are just doing this. And it's not just exercise, it's all the rest of it. So basically, Tennille was asking about the warm-up. Let me tell you something.
Well, and it's interesting, right? Because it actually can shift or change, or for some of the athletes that I work with, it has changed and it needs to look different.
Yes, yeah. There's normal, healthy aging. There is. I mean, our arteries, even if you take really, really, really good care of yourself, they're not going to be as elastic as they were when you were in your 20s. So this is normal. And I think a lot of times we get caught in, we can prevent everything. No, we cannot. But we sure as heck can extend that health span, square it off, and then boom. The problem today, and this is what that course is about chronic conditions for 30, 40 years, multiple procedures, pile on the meds. And ladies, I'm telling you, you live longer, but you do not live better. Just go to a nursing home. Who's in there? 95% are women. Frail. And I'm just going to get on my high horse here. Ladies, I love endurance. I've competed in everything. If you're not strength training twice a week, you're going to be frail. So get on it. That's really, really important. But back to the warm up, it takes longer to warm up when we're older. So our dynamic warm up, I'm sure Tennille's got, I'll back up to this. But back to the warm-up, yeah, it takes longer to raise the body temperature, get the blood flowing, to warm up the tissues. And it also can take longer to warm down. So make that first 15 minutes of your training session, whether it includes power and strength training or it's more of an endurance type of workout, 15 minutes is non-negotiable. That's your soft tissue work, your stretching, your dynamic warm-up, all those things, critical. Maybe some gait speed drills. I don't know what's going on, but so yeah, it just recognized, and it also takes us longer to recover from a hard workout. And take it from someone who's learned it the hard way.
Okay. Yeah.
But
what do you mean by that? Like I'm all ears. So learned the hard way, meaning you didn't recover. You went hard the next day and the next day,
Yep.
or
Exactly.
and then you got yourself into a compromised situation.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it totally was spot on. And let me tell you, I have that personality.
You don't say.
It's in me, but the recovery is equally as important as the training.
Love it.
I cannot emphasize that enough. You do not have the elasticity. You don't have, we're like beef jerky as we age. So you got to fight it. And the soft tissue work, I'm sure you're foam rolling and doing all kinds of things. That's absolutely critical,
right.
Especially in, if you're getting 35 is the time to turn it around. So,
right.
But a quick note here, I thought this was really very relevant, and don't get hung up on the molecular stuff, but that's basically where aging takes place, inside the cell, inside the mitochondria.
Yeah.
But I want you to just look right up to the very top left where it says lifestyle modification. Not to worry about the drugs and the other stuff they're trying to do to improve cardiovascular aging, but it's the fasting, the exercise, obviously not eating too much or excess. But there's a word in the middle there, folks. It's called autophagy. You may have heard of it. That's the cell's house cleaning system, the recycling system that gets rid of the debris and the crap as our cells generate energy, as our mitochondria generate energy. And what happens with aging, in a very poor environment with lots of insults and assaults on a daily basis, that process doesn't work. So the crap piles up, we get these half-dead cells called zombie cells.
Yeah.
And they basically facilitate or accelerate aging. So
are they actually called zombie cells?
Zombie cells. They're like half-dead cells.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But somebody had a bit of a humor when they were calling them zombie cells, but in any case.
They're like these half-dead cells that wreak havoc on the neighboring cell. You know how if you have a pint of strawberries and one gets moldy, and then it
gets everybody else? Okay.
Yeah.
Is this part of like the rest and digest sort of idea? Like that's just one example of this, is that if we're not allowing ourselves to actually participate into this autophagy phase, this part of the cycle, everybody's going to start getting that. Tennille's all about cycles, part of the cycle of cellular regeneration and adaptation. Okay.
You want your body to try to return to homeostasis, the rest and digest, the repair, the regenerate. Yeah. And if you look at the bottom of those two blocks on the bottom, when we take care of ourselves, all of our systems, but especially the cardiovascular system, age better. Right. So anyway, but it's what you just said, Tennille, is spot on. It's one of my pillars, and it's called rhythms of the day.
Yeah. Circadian, infradian. It's where I'm really taking my whole theory. In any case, we're not talking about my theories. Okay, let's keep going on this. Oh, look at rocks and buckets. Oh, I know it's coming up.
Yeah, that'll be coming.
That's coming. I know. Okay.
And I'm sorry, Tennille, but just so people know, this is again as a reference, because that course I did was on not only prevention, but it was also on, okay, you get a woman who walks in with this or this, but the heart failure with the preserved ejection fraction, which is the power of the squirt when your heart ejects, that is more common in women. So that's one of those things that we know for a fact, based on our genes and our size and our hormones, the fact that we have more inflammation and the fact that because we have more fat, we can get ourselves into trouble with diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all this stuff. That definitely increases our risk for heart failure. So there are differences.
Right.
Okay, so back to how hard. I think you were going to ask me how hard, right, Camille?
Well, yeah. So the other thing, so we talk about the symptoms now. Now we want to talk about one of the fears that I know a lot of athletes have as we age is like, can I, we keep on hearing about go hit it hard, go high intensity, go lift heavy, do these things. And people are just like, yeah, but I'm getting older and it's hard to go there. And what does that feel like? And should I be scared? What do I need to worry about? So yeah, help us understand that piece of it. And is a 10 out of 10, can I go for, a 9 out of 10 in a Borg scale of perceived effort? Like, what is that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And look at you.
The one thing I think, well, this is where a coach or a trainer comes in. What have you been doing for the last 2, 3, 4 decades? That is the first question.
Right.
And it's never too late to start. It's just harder to make change, especially if it's full lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. And the body will respond, strength, power, endurance, whatever. But you got to know what they've been doing.
Right.
And so people, the ones who have sudden cardiac death or have an incident are typically the ones who put themselves in a situation they haven't been in a long time and they overdo it. And as coaches, what do? Regress, progress, regress, progress, regress. We adjust according to the person. So, and high intensity, like a 10 on the board, it's relative. Yeah. If I ask, my sedentary client to walk up a hill 200 feet, that could be a 9. Where for me, it's maybe a 2. So it's very much relative. And as we adapt with our training programs, we up the ante. But where the heart attacks and all the issues occur are typically when people get into a position they haven't been in a long time. Think of shoveling snow. Think of a guy, I usually pick on guys on this one. Oh, I'm going to play pickup basketball. I haven't played in 20 years and haven't done squat in the last. No, that is a no-no. And then, of course, you look at your family history and your other risk factors. And the biggie is medications. That's the monkey wrench in everything. And unfortunately, our society, and this is my presentation as well, has become dependent on many, many medications, especially those for mental health. And every medication has a side effect. So you as a coach or trainer, you got to know what they're on. And then you need to know, how does it affect my work capacity? That's huge. How does it affect my thermoregulatory system? Those things are huge. So intensity and the monkey wrench of meds are the 2 big things we need to know. Got to know family history. But you can push hard. That's not it. It's how you got there to push hard.
Right. I think it's such an interesting thing. And just coming back to your hill example, like when we're training somebody, we always know we need the foundation, right? Like we need a foundation of fitness before we're going to, like, we can start bringing them up into some intensity. And this is what's interesting, like the HIIT programs. Mm-hmm. So there's tons of research showing, we can do 30 minutes a day, 30 seconds on, 15 seconds off. It's going to give people there's research that is like 10 minutes. Like they keep on bringing it down and down. Like how fast can we do this? It's unbelievable. But I think the point is, to your person that was walking up a hill and it was a 9 out of 10, to you, and it was a 2 out of 10, it's still, their 9 is still their 9. Your 9 is still your 9. And so it's relative to just the overall fitness. But this is what I say to my athletes all the time. You are working as hard as an elite professional athlete. They just are going faster.
Yes.
But yes. I am looking at, I'm just going, oh my goodness, you were holding 90% of your maximum heart rate elite athletes do that. What I just want to really come into that, because it's like, we know my athletes work as hard as anybody out there.
Yeah.
I don't care.
That's right. That it's relative to the person. And they're even doing now, and there's quite a bit of research to document this, people who come into cardiac rehab, in other words, they've had procedures or whatever, they are so deconditioned that HIIT is being used, for example, on a bicycle, 15 seconds, where you may perceive it as, are they pedaling? And then we get off and we rest. That it's relative to the person. But then as time goes on, that becomes their warm-up. So it's all about progression.
It's all about progression. And it's and I just think it's super exciting. And I just want to hone in on this. When you're looking to your left and you're looking to your right of all the people that were coming together to be in health, to be in exercise, it doesn't matter how fast we go. We're all in it. We're doing it. If I tell my athletes to work hard, they are going. Like, you should see the intensity and the intention that is coming into my spin classes. And it's just like celebrating that.
Yes.
I don't care about your pace. Your pace does not dictate you being an athlete. Okay. That was me on my soapbox. Let's get back to your values.
It's really good. So back to Neil's question, and this is coming up, but I had a max test for that course. I wanted to see, what I could do, where I stacked up. But the reason I did it was I could go into my buddy down here, Sam, I need a max test. I want to know. Well, you look at, I don't have any risk factors, so he pushed me to max, and you get everything done. So that's the true way to figure out. Yeah. But we cannot do that to people.
No, let's not do that. Yeah.
Oh, that's just a nice graph on how you stack up based on age. And I always try to encourage people, hey, if you're in the 60s, you go for the 40s. You go for the 30s. Yeah. So, but the big thing,
your energy is at its amazing. All right.
And what you basically said, though, see the red line there?
Yeah.
The biggest gains in health span, longevity, and survival come when you get that person who scored poor interfere. That's where the big survival gains are.
It's amazing. Yeah. And honestly, it's by starting with movement. And while many of these listeners are moving, and there's always things to learn here. So, let's keep going. Yeah.
That's just a report for people to read, because you use the zone system. That's there for them. Whoopsie. Yeah. Okay. And you had a question, I think, something along these lines. We're talking about different ways to measure intensity.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we did. Okay. Well, keep going, because you're leading from one thing to another really well.
Well, anyway, if you can't do a max test and truly figure out what is your peak, then we have to estimate. And unless you're in a position where you've got medical background to do max testing, then no, we do sub-max testing, or we use formulas to estimate. Now, these are some of the ones that are out there. Remember, we started 40 years ago with 220 minus your age. And now all of a sudden we got all these people who are training and living longer and better, and that formula's kind of been tossed. But here's some different ones that you can use that are a little bit more accurate. And for a woman, this is, I think, pretty interesting. The one with the gold star there, this one's recommended for asymptomatic middle-aged women referred for stress testing. So if we talked about this client who's worried about this and we don't have a peak on them, we could estimate that. So useful tools there.
Yeah, interesting, because I did look at some of these and I tested them out on all my athletes. And I think that the point here was that it was highly individual. Like, I was like, okay, my athletes are all over the map. They were not falling nicely into any categories.
Right.
And so I don't know, we are going to get into the Palpitations thing as well for the aerobic, but I know in a previous slide you had talked about heart rate reserve. So I'll wait, and because I know we'll come back to that in a second here.
And sometimes you need a baseline, but let's face it, folks, the RPE is still, it's still fantastic.
Yeah,
still
it's fantastic. Like biohacking 101.
I mean, it really, and with the number of people, many of you out there may be personal trainers and working with people on medications. If you're on a beta blocker or some of the other blood pressure meds, you have to use RPE. Heart rate does not work. You can know it, but you can't gauge intensity on it. So,
right.
And then there's filmapatone. We discussed this. This is another method. I think it's got application, but as Tennille said, people are all over the map. My max heart rate on that max stress test was 149. When I do this formula, my max is 128. So it's a difference.
Yeah, but let's just say for your maximum aerobic heart rate for aerobic training, and that's
Correct.
key there. So in the Fast Talk Labs, we talk about Trevor Connor was using a 3-zone system and thinking about zone 1, 2, and 3. And this is anything above that in zone 2, or if you're my athletes listening to this, we have a 7-zone system. We're starting anything above a zone 2, so zone 3 and up. So this math is really interesting because when we were geeking out, when Pat and I were geeking out just before we came onto this call, I'm thrilled to say that if you use heart rate reserve, while it was a little bit more conservative, and I was happy about that, more conservative, understanding that zone 2 is really important, because anything above we can start saying is higher intensity. Now there's that zone 3 that kind of brings us up into that threshold work. So knowing this and using this formula could definitely, for the ease of many people that aren't sure of how to do heart rate reserve and don't have, spreadsheets like my athletes get, in terms of like knowing this is an excellent tool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's variety out there.
Variety. Yeah.
Plug them in and see if you can get a decent resting heart rate. That's helpful. Totally.
Super helpful. Okay. Heart rate variability.
I brought this up, Tennille, because I was thinking that you probably keep an eye on your folks' recovery. Am I correct?
Yes. Heart rate variability. We talk about it. Yes.
Okay. So basically, we want to be able to rest and recover. And the faster we can do that, the better. Yeah. So typically those folks with a high VO2 max or high endurance capacity, they have what they have considered high vagal tone, and they recover quickly. That's one of the adaptations to regular exercise and training.
Right.
And you can come back from, stress response, adrenaline rush, boom, 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 but then when it's over, boom, you're back to normal.
Right.
And do you measure any of this, Tennille? Do your folks use?
Yeah, we absolutely talk about it. It just depends on what sort of technology they have available. Yeah. I mean, when heart rate variability, I have my Aura ring. I love it. I geek out on it. I totally, admittedly, these are just all about trends, and I think that for people that don't have heart rate variability technology, using your resting heart rate is awesome.
I agree.
I agree. It's another piece to help us come into our body and kind of sometimes help us say, well, I woke up actually, I was totally feeling fine, but my sleep monitor, my heart rate variability is showing something else. Is there something else? And it's more about asking ourselves questions. Yeah. And I use it for that, and then to make any sort of straight and narrow kind of decision on it. So yeah, I think it's such a smart thing to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now the tools are useful as long as we don't become obsessed with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you were mentioning about the warm-up. This is just a flow of a session that I would coach a person, whether a novice on the left or more experienced on the right. And this isn't necessarily endurance training, but the strength, power, and speed work for adults twice a week is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And that first 15 minutes of the mobility, the soft tissue work, the stretching, the dynamic mobility, and then for adults, the locomotion and the speed skills. Key. Gait speed is key to healthy aging. Whether you're a triathlete or you're a hiker or a fast walker, the gait speed is huge.
Can you just tell people what you specifically mean when you're saying gait speed?
Yeah. It probably doesn't affect many of your folks, but I bet it affects their parents. No, posture and gait are directly related. And we know for a fact that those folks, as they age, who cannot walk faster than 1.2 meters per second, cannot climb stairs. So it's upright posture, it's springing your step, it's reciprocal arms, much like sprint, and it's independent hips. And so keeping that ability, we take walking for granted. Walking is freedom. It's your freedom to go where you want, when you want. And when we lose that, we get that slipper shuffle. Our movement sphere goes from here to here. So when you're training older adults, they may not be triathletes, but they need to keep the speed at which they walk with posture, with spring. And if you're teaching running mechanics, sprint mechanics, it's the same thing. So yeah, absolutely critical. It's got to be part of the first 15 minutes. So that's something I do routinely, whoever I'm coaching.
Love it. Okay. Excellent.
So,
let's keep going.
And of course, warm up, warm down. We mentioned that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
Now you can butt in here, but this is the aging thing. And it directly applies to, I don't care if you're an elite athlete or you're just trying to get all away from your desk and get healthier. But these are the 4 things that accelerate aging. And if we want to age better, we have to smother them all. So the first one, front line, we are on the front line of all of this. Inactivity is the major contributor for all of diabetes that's just busting out everywhere. You pile on the inactivity with the assaults of the terrible food, the screen stuck, movement sucking lifestyle, substance abuse, stressing out of your gourd and not handling better. So assaults, insults, and neglect, you pile that onto inactivity, then we get the insulin resistance and the fat gain and the oxidative stress, which then is all related to the inflammation. But the problem is the chronic inflammation, the low-grade inflammation. Inflammation is good when you have an infection or a wound, but when it's chronic and low-grade because of those darn zombie cells I was talking about, yeah, it's chronic. And that's where our aging-related chronic diseases come in. And as I said, all systems age. Immunosenescence is just an older immune system. So it's just not as robust as it was. But we got the top 3 on top of that, we're heading for trouble. So.
I just want to point something out about the chronic inflammation and coming back to our point about recovery. So often we don't necessarily think about chronic inflammation in terms of our training. Mm-hmm. And when we don't allow the recovery, that's when we're also going to see this. That's when chronic inflammation starts to arise. Yep. And so we can see it on so many levels. And this is, again, coming back into cycle, allowing your body to have the cycle that it needs so that we can really, stress. We want the strain and the stress. We want the strain and the stress. And equally, coming to another masterclass interview with Charlotte Thurup, thinking about that, the drawback as powerful as the push forward. And this is really coming into the inflammation point in terms of both health and performance,
Yes,
yeah.
totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the fourth one is, that's a big word. It's, can I try it just for fun?
Yep.
Immunosenescence.
Yep. Immunosenescence. That's just an aging immune system.
Okay.
And you have it really came to light with the COVID, because the question comes down to, we all know who did better with COVID. Those people who took better care of themselves. And the elderly people who had a less than robust immune system did not fare well. And those same people were typically inactive and overweight. Killers. Those are the killers right there. Those top two are just, they advance aging.
Yeah, really tough. Really.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
All right. 5 pillars of hardiness and heartedness. I love this.
so anyway, folks, we all want to be resilient, durable, and robust as we age. And I call that hardiness. And if we're talking cardiovascular, heartiness. But it's really, it's built on 5 pillars. And those 5 pillars, and this is the most important thing that we coaches do, those 5 pillars are rooted in the bedrock of daily habits, practices, and patterns. And REHAB stands for restore, energy, hardiness, aspirations, and benchmarks. So
is this your model?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And folks, this will change as we go through life. I mean, I look at Tennille, she's got a couple little ones running around somewhere. Mine are all grown. So this will change, but we still want to fortify our pillars. And the earlier we have our practices, habits, and patterns set, the easier it is to stay hardy, to keep our vitality and age really well.
Yeah.
And of course, one does not stand alone. They buttress each other. So you can't just train for endurance and not care what you eat, not take care of yourself, as Tennille just said, not recover. Can't do it. Because eventually you will break down, especially if you're over 35, and then the next big one is over 50.
That's a really important to know, hey? Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. And within each pillar, there's 3 big rocks. And people get hung up on granules and little pebbles. This is a problem. You know Stephen Covey, you've maybe read his stuff. What's the most important things in your life? Okay, family freedom. Rocks fill voids, pebbles fill the spaces, and then these little granules fill the cracks. If you put all the little crap in first, you have no room for the big rocks. And today, with the constant barrage of health information, people want granule fixes for big rock challenges. And that's where those pillars and rocks come in. So if we look at the rocks in each pillar, purpose, your reason to get up in the morning. You want to age well, you have a purpose. Folks, if you have not read the Blue Zones, read it. The Blue Zones, those people, those societies, 5 of them around the world, who live to 100, but they age really well. Movement, it's not just training. It's move for fun. And it's move throughout your day. Get off our rear ends and get away from that darn screen. Do tasks, do chores. So those are the 3 big rocks. The diet, water, hello. I want the fanciest gel pack. No, drink water. We want a big variety of the macro, micro nutrients, and we want them timed, timely, proportional, in the right portion. It's like simple, but people want the latest supplement, the latest Gatorade, the latest whatever. They want all those granules, but then they ignore the rocks. Then we have the rhythms. This is what you were talking about, Tennille. It's the shape of our day. Do we have patterns that allow us to sleep well, to rest, recovery, regenerate, and to rest and relax? That's what it's about. It's the rhythms of our day, the shape of our day. And those people who live to 100 well, the way they live, the patterns shapes their day.
Really does.
And we're battling this with the screen. And then of course we have the stress thing. I'm so stressed out. Okay, yeah, there's some real stressors in this world. I get that. But we can control how we react to them. And we have to build a big defense and an offense against them using the pillars. And of course, our perception of a stressor determines how we're going to react to it. We can work on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a habit if you have it, so make it a hardy one.
Yeah, my business coach, who's Christina Jandali, just gave us a wonderful thing I just loved it. It's like, you have no blocks. There are no blocks. It's just the perception that you have a block. So get on with it, everybody. And start living your best life. There's no block there, but there's a perceived idea that you do have one. So therefore, you have to change your perception. So just a little bit on that. Thank you.
No, it's all about how we live our shape to our day.
Yeah.
And we've gotten, I mean, just think about now where people eat, for example. Where do people eat?
On the go, in their car.
On the go, in the car, at the computer. Yeah, I mean, it's back to meals at the counter. And you don't eat anywhere else unless you're rushing around for some crazy reason, but it's patterns and rhythms to our day. Yeah. And then there's, we talked a little bit about this. This is the 7S functional training buckets. Come up with this over the years, but folks, it's the 7 S's. So I don't care if you're training for a triathlon or you're training for health, or you're training for all 4 seasons go like I do. No, you fill all those buckets. So first you got to buy in and I can shape the way I age. And then there's the suppleness and the stability bucket. I call it the baby bucket, the ground game. That's your freedom to move. Then we have gait speed, sprint like mechanics, your freedom to go. Then we have strength and power. That's your anti-frailty bucket, a non-negotiable for females. Then we have our skills bucket, agility, balance, coordination, power, reaction, speed. That's your freedom to play. That's your freedom to get outside. That expands your movement sphere. Then we have our stamina bucket, which we talked about today, but that's our freedom to go, 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 go all day long, all year long.
Yeah.
And then the specificity and specific buckets, that's what's specific to me. And hey, we get what we train for.
Yeah.
All the buckets need to be filled. The robustness of one or the other depends on what you're training for. But I know Tennille can attest to this. You train that stamina bucket and you don't do your strength and power bucket or your mobility stability bucket, you're breaking down. So got to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's just a point there is like, accidents happen, but that's not where most injuries come from.
Not in endurance sports. Nope.
Yeah. And I think that we will continue to find ourselves in challenges. Let's just put it that way. If we are neglecting a part of this, whether it be your balance and agility, or whether it be the power and the speed or the whatever it is, it's like, okay, so if we are coming in from injury, what is it that we get to look at here? Where is it our foundation? Maybe where are we out of cycle, out of sync, and finding dysfunction so that we can address it, because it's never too late.
That's right.
It's just injury is like a wake-up call. I mean, I'm talking from somebody who has unfortunately had a lot of wake-up calls and took a while to get there. So yeah, and I'm still gonna screw up. We're human. I get ahead of myself all the time, surprisingly. But this is the thing, like, we get to keep learning. And because we're willing to learn, because we're creating possibility, it's okay. And that we are super resilient if we continue to work on and be in the buckets of the 7 S's. I love it. I love all these little things that you're giving us. Okay. Anything else that you want to share with us here as we kind of come into this? Come into the end here.
I think you had asked me any special stuff about females.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah.
I just am so passionate about this. Ladies, strength and power training is non-negotiable.
Right.
You're less muscle, less bone, less strength, less power out of the starting gate. And I don't care, you can run your freaking brains out, but you have to be strong. That's the deciding factor when you go to the nursing home. And if you want to reduce, if you want to be fall resistant, you fill all those buckets, but you also work agility, balance, coordination, power, reaction, and speed. Endurance athletes have a tendency to go one direction. Swim, bike, run, right? Lateral movement, no.
Yeah.
So when athletes training for a particular event stop training for that particular event, you train for life. It's not even, it's no stop start. Programs with a start date and an end date are going to fail. It's the lifespan philosophy that will definitely prevail. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's just like a diet. It has a start date and an end date. Nope, it's not going to work. It works for 3 months.
Right.
So it's this mindset towards, I will do these things for ALAP as long as possible till I can't. But the best way to slow down the rate at which we age is movement. And it's not just one training session a day and then park your ass the rest of the day. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't erase it all. So this is why looking at how we actually live our lives and how we perceive how we want to age, that's the magic right there. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, ladies, we're behind the 8 ball in certain things. So we got to fill that bucket to make it happen. And they're all interrelated. I said, you don't skip over one. Why do you think physical therapists were so busy in the 70s, 80s, and 90s? Because of endurance sport athletes. They run, they get hurt. They run, they get hurt. They run, they get hurt. And they never address the root of the problem. So the buckets, all of them. And then, of course, we have to look at the orthopedic when we're training and coaching and selecting exercises and movements that people need. We not only have to look at the orthopedic cost, Mike Boyle quoted that, we also have to look at the cardiovascular incident risk. Someone comes in, family history, my blood pressure's a little high. We have to be able to program for what they need, but also what they want. And Jim Fix, do you know who Jim Fix is, Tennille?
No.
You're probably too young.
I'm too young, everybody.
I know you've heard of Ken Cooper and Cooper Clinic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. His quote is basically, we are our own primary care physicians.
We are.
But Jim Fix, Cooper aerobics and the running revolution was in the late 70s and 80s. Jim Fix wrote that book, The Complete Running, Book of Running. Basically, I think he was in his 40s. He completely overhauled his life, quit smoking, dropped weight, and started running. Run, 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 run. And Ken Cooper, his buddy, said to him, Jim, you have a family history and you treated yourself like crap for 3 decades. You need to have a maximum stress test. He didn't do it, was out running one day, stopped on the side of the road to wait for a car to go by, big heart attack, finish. So this was something, and that's when all the non-runners were like, whoa, see, if you run, you're going to have a heart attack. So this history is important. We have to kind of remember exercise is not a panacea. We got to be smart about it. So history is important. And this is some extra studies for your folks along the lines of what we were talking earlier, but I thought some may want to actually look them up and dig in, but they're out there, and just more information about what we covered. So any other questions, Tennille?
Oh my goodness. Well, I do have one more question for you. And it's a question I'm asking all of my people, and you might, I don't know if this is going to be interesting. So my final question is all about you. And it was, do you have one moment in time that you knew that you, like, this is, I don't know, 45 years ago, you began this career of supporting people, educating people, getting people moving, living in health, living with life, living with power and strength. How did you start? What got you going? Or was it just always in you?
Um, Now, I will say, I was raised, it comes from my childhood, but also I love fixing things and I love helping people fix themselves. There's nothing to me more rewarding than someone who just said, text Pat, I just, blah, 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 blah. To me, that's like, yeah, that's why I do what I do. But it started, I grew up in a household of 3 brothers, spent my entire life practically outdoors. My dad, World War II vet, but could do anything with his hands, physical manual labor. But we were raised to not only do physical work, but also to play really hard. And this is why I live in Montana right now. Greetings from Big Sky, Montana. It's all 4 seasons go. So there was like none of this, I'm slowing down as I age thing with him. Are you kidding me? He was speed skating, downhill skiing, climbing on roofs, repair in his 90s. And he also went through 2 pacemakers. Right. So, I mean, it's just in you, I don't know what it is. It's just something about you just keep going. You don't slow down. And 60 is the time to ramp it up. The worst thing you can do is slow down. So.
All right. So all of you in postmenopause, you're ramping up. You are not slowing down. We are ramping up here. You heard it from Pat, who is definitely, I know everybody's felt your energy. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your passion and your love for all of this. I know I have learned a ton from you. So, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure and my privilege to be. What a blast.
It was a blast.
Yep.